Welcome everybody to this online webinar of Cohelion. My name is Dan Boersma and I will be your host for the next hour. During this webinar, we're going to discuss an important topic for many organizations: data quality and master data management. For the coming hour, we will have a full agenda with interesting speakers. I'm going to walk you through today's agenda. Our first speaker is data expert Rick van der Lans, who will tell more about the importance of master data management and how it can be implemented in existing but also new data architectures. Our second speaker is Roeland Krom, CEO and founder of Cohelion. He will give a live demo how master data management is being done at Cohelion and how you can involve important business users in improving your data quality. Our last guest speaker is Philipp Müller, Head of Performance and Analytics at Swissport, and he will explain how master data management is being used and being done at Swissport, but also share his experiences and lessons learned at Swissport. At the end, we will have a Q&A, and there you have the possibility to ask all your questions to Roeland, Rick, but also Philipp. Good to mention is that if you already have a question, you can always ask them in the chat, and we try to answer all your questions during the Q&A. But now it's time for our first speaker, and that is Rick van der Lans. Rick van der Lans is independent analyst, consultant, author, and internationally acclaimed lecturer specialized in data architectures, data warehousing, and business intelligence. He is also presenting countless of seminars, webinars at industry-leading conferences, but also helps clients internationally in designing their data warehouse architectures, business intelligence architectures, and of course, selecting the right tooling. Rick, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Thank you for the kind introduction and for the invitation. And thanks to all the listeners for joining us for this webinar. What I'm going to do the coming minutes is the following: that, as I think everyone knows, master data is not a new topic, right? Many organizations already have a master data management solution up and running. But what I see, and you probably see the same thing, is that if you look at who's responsible for managing those master data environments, if you look at who's doing all the inserting of new data, mapping data together, making changes, updating it. What you see is that primarily IT specialists are doing that. And I think it's time that we allow our business users also to update master data, to insert master data, make changes to the master data, categorize it, map it. And that's what I like to discuss the coming minutes, and the other speakers will focus on that as well. So let's talk about master data, and let's talk about why business users should be allowed to sort of play with the master data, insert and update it. And I think the story starts here. Hold on a second, I have to do this. So before we talk about master data, I think let's talk about the terms here on the screen. I think they're not new to you, right? Almost every organization today is trying to become a data-driven organization. Almost every company has started some kind of a digital transformation initiative. You see companies who want to become part of the data economy. They see data as a mechanism to sort of disrupt, let's say, the business. Now, I know that all these terms do not mean the same thing, of course, but they have one thing in common, and it is that companies want to do more with data, right? If you want to become data-driven, you want to do more with data. And doing more with data probably means that you want to use it more effectively, more efficiently, more widely, right? In the hope that your business processes and decision-making processes will become more, improve somehow. So that's sort of driving us all. But we all know that doing more with data, I mean, it's not just you want to do more with data, you want to do more with high quality data, right? Because it's clear to most of us in the IT industry that the business value of data is dependent on the quality of the data itself, right? How correct is it? How consistent is it? Because if data is not really of a high level, then what you're going to get is possibly extra cost. You can end up in situations where the decisions are being made are sort of the incorrect decisions, because you're making the decisions on incorrect data. It could mean that the reporting you do to regulatory organizations is incorrect. So the business value of data is, of course, related to the quality of the data. And you must have seen studies. Oh, to be honest, over so many years, yeah, we have seen studies where it's being tried to indicate, yeah, what the costs are of incorrect data to an organization. Yeah, and here are just some of the studies that have been published the last, I would say, 20 years. So, yeah, Hazelcorn in 2015 said that on average, US organizations believe 32% of their data is inaccurate. You go like, that's 1/3, right? That's a lot, right? And this was a 28% increase over last year's figure of 25%. You go like, that's not a good development. Or Gardner, right? And they're really trying to transform it into money, right? The average financial impact of poor data quality on the organization is estimated to be 9.7 million per year, the average. So that means for probably larger companies, it's a lot more. And an interesting study done about 10 years ago by the University of Southern Denmark. If you try to find the link and read it, because it's fascinating stuff to read about what the costs are of incorrect data. So, for example, 75% of organizations have identified costs stemming from dirty data. 100 billion per year is lost in the US in poorly targeted mailings and staff hours alone. I mean, we know this, right? The quality of data has an impact on its business value. It's clear to us all. Now, just to be sure, right, what do we mean with incorrect data? Of course, incorrect data can have all kinds of forms, right? Misspelled names is probably the best well-known one, right? That we have misspelled the names of companies, customers, suppliers, patient, customers, you name it. And of course, if we do that, then integrating data on patient names or on customer names is very, very hard to do. So this is a clear example of sort of incorrect data, but also incorrect codes, right? That we're using, for example, 5 different codes to identify the gender female, for example, in a system. It's horrible, right? If we have those situations in our systems, because I mean, if you want to do reporting on that, I mean, you first have to get rid of all these sort of inconsistent codes in your systems. And then, of course, inconsistent codes within an organization. It could be, for example, that you have a sales system in which you store customer data. You have a finance system in which you store customer data. But because one system you built yourself and the other one you bought, those two systems are not using the same key structures to identify the individual customers. Well, if that's the case, then how do you want to integrate customer data from those two systems? Of course, what you could try to do is look at things such as, are the names the same? Are the addresses the same? Are some other attributes the same? And then maybe you can sort of say, well, then these are probably the same customer, but that's risky to do, right? You will never have 100% guarantee that what you're integrating is really perfect. Mind you, those inconsistent codes within an organization is not what we like, right? It just happens because in different systems, different applications, we just use different sets of codes to identify certain objects. And then, of course, we have inconsistent codes across organizations. That could be a problem in multinationals, right? Where we have to integrate data coming from multiple companies, all owned by the multinational itself. And then what you see is that different countries in their system use different codes to identify exactly the same thing. Again, it makes it hard, of course, to integrate that data. And then, of course, we have the concept of different versions of the truth. So let's say the stock level of a certain product is set to, let's say, 200. in one system, while it is 250 in another system. Well, which one is correct? So which one is the truth, right? Again, if users are going to work with data, which one do we pick, right? Which one has the right value? And I think I could go on for another few minutes to indicate all these different forms of incorrect data. But for us today, this set is an important set. Now, where is this stuff coming from? Now, where are all those problems coming from? Well, lots of reasons. Yeah, leaky applications, applications that just allow us, or that allow the people who enter the data to enter incorrect data. There's not enough checking going on when people enter data. Well, that's definitely a source, right, for all this incorrect data. Inconsistent applications that just store certain values differently. Imagine that you have a system running here in Holland and you have one in France, and probably we're using different spellings for exactly the same thing. Okay, that will introduce some inconsistent coding. It could be that the people who enter the data have not been trained properly. They've not been told how important it is that they fill in all the fields or all the data entry fields, that they fill them in correctly. Maybe they're not even being rewarded for that. No data ownership assigned. That's a very classic problem. If no one feels responsible for the data and the data quality, then who's going to take action, right, when that data needs to be corrected? We can talk for hours on this topic. And then, of course, external data that we sort of retrieve from other organizations. Could be that the external data is just poor data quality stuff, right? So there can be all kinds of reasons why we have to deal with that incorrect and inconsistent data. Now, master data management systems, which have been on the market for quite a long time, help us with this, right? They help us to sort of define what's the right data, right? To sort of introduce all the correct codes, the consistent coding. It allows us to map incorrect values to correct values. We've had this technology for quite some time. But what you see always, and that's how I started, is that primarily IT specialists work with these tools. Now, of course, the business users will see the impact of what they're doing. They will see they will benefit from it, right? When they build up these master data systems. But it's primarily something done and managed by IT specialists. And I wonder whether that's the good way to go. Now, one more thing is, why is this master data stuff so important? Well, it leads, if we do this right, if we manage our master data properly, it means improved data integration, better business insights, improved analysis results, and improved data compliance. Because if you have to sort of create a report that you have to send to a regulatory organization, then the data should be correct. But if the data that you use to create that report is not 100% correct, how correct is that report, right? So from all kinds of angles, master data is important. But again, it's primarily mastered by IT specialists. And we have to be honest, IT specialists will do everything they can, I assume, right, to sort of get that data quality level to sort of the highest possible point. But the point is they don't really understand the data itself, right? They understand the business models, the business rules, but they don't. I mean, an IT specialist will never be able to say, "Hey, the budget for this project is set to 200,000. I think it should be 180,000." I mean, it's not his world, right? So an IT specialist won't recognize that the budget value of a specific project is incorrect. Nor will an IT specialist will see that, this is still the old address of the customer. They don't know that stuff, right? And we can give lots and lots of those examples. They won't see that two customers in the customer table, let's say, are in fact the same customer, right? Two different records, slightly spelled customer names, and they're the same. They don't know that. But account managers will probably know that. And the project manager of a project will see that, hey, my budget is not 200,000, it's 180,000. right? But if you look at what happens, if users do identify that something is incorrect, what normally happens is the following. And I'm using the classic data warehouse architecture as an example, but I could also have used the data lake architecture or the data hub architecture, but I've just taken one of the most classic ones. And I hope you sort of recognize this architecture, right, where we copy data, from staging areas to warehouses to data marts. Now, normally, if we have a master data system in place, what you'll see is that the IT specialists will manage all that master data, and the business users don't have access to it. So if a project manager sees that, hey, the project budget is incorrect, it's too high, the only thing he can do is just call up someone and say, it's incorrect, right? Can you please correct it? But it could take hours or days before that corrected value is available for the reporting that's being done, right? And some really like a week, right? So what does the user have to do? Just continue his working on that report while he knows that the values are incorrect? No, what most users then do is they just copy the data from their reports into a spreadsheet, and then they'll change it there, right? Because else they can't continue with their work. Now, this is what you get, of course, if master data is purely a game played by IT specialists, and that we should change. We should change the situation. We should allow business users to change the master data itself. If they see that the address of the customer is incorrect, they should be able to change that. If they see that a product has been categorized or assigned to the wrong category, they should be able to change that. If they see that the budget value is incorrect, they should be able to change that as well. But not only that, what you also want is that if they make that change, they want to see the effect of that change within their reports. Of course, a 1 or 2 or 3 second delay is fine, but not an hour, a day, or a whole week. And I think this is the strength of the Cohelion master data management product. It allows business users in an easy and simple way to change the master data. If they see something is wrong, they understand their data. And then when they've done that, that they can see that effect in their reports instantly. But I'm going to give the word back to Dan now, because Roeland is going to show you how that really works in Cohelion. But thanks so far. I'll be back for the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Rick, and for sharing these insights, but also how master data management is normally done. And of course, the importance of involving those business users. That is why I would like to introduce our second speaker, and that is Roeland Krom. Roeland Krom is founder and managing director of Cohelion. And Roeland has been more than 18 years of experience with complex data integration and master data management projects. And of course, he will show us a live demo of how master data management is being done at Cohelion. And also important, how you can involve important business users by improving their data quality. So Roeland, I would like to give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Rick. Very nice overview and introduction. I think over the past years, we've seen many companies struggle with maintaining their master data. You see numerous spreadsheets like this with all the mapping tables and VLOOKUPs trying to bind all sorts of data together. Over the years, we've come to a more structural solution in the form of our data management application. It actually contains 6 features. You could go to the next one. Yeah. These are six features that are present in our master data management solutions. They're all built as a result of practical problems that we've come across our many customers, and that we found a practical solution. With, just like Rick mentions, the business user was always our center, our target audience, and not the IT specialist. That brings restrictions to the user interface. It needs to be much more user-friendly and fault-tolerant, but also in terms of access right permissions, that need to be fine-grained, so people can only access where they have some authority to. But let's start at number one, data mapping. Data mapping, I think any company that has multiple applications or even multiple offices will come across a data mapping challenge, whereby a customer is known with different codes in different applications. Broadly speaking, there are three solutions to that. One is ignore the problem and just assume that all your application use the same coding standard. But a second alternative would be the use of Excel mapping tables. With VLOOKUPs, you try to make some sense of all the data. But the third solution, of course, is what we propose, and that's actually introduce a master data management solution where you can properly maintain all mappings between all different code variants. I think second point that I'd like to show you in the demo is the hierarchy store, also known as reference data. This is useful for companies that go through regular reorganizations, like a different regional structure or different divisions or some other structure. Could also be used for products where you have different products groups or families that change over time, or customers that are in a sector, etc., or different parent companies. There should be one central point where that is all maintained, and I think in master data management solution is a good way to start with that. Thing number three, the golden record. That's a very common problem. It's what Rick mentioned was the different versions of the truth that are around in the whole company, in an organization. So you could have your sales figures coming out of Salesforce, but your repair statistics come from another application, and the number of hours worked for a specific customer is maintained somewhere else. And how do you maintain all that data centered around a customer? The golden records feature is a solution to that. It's linked to data classification, so everything that you know about an item or a product or a customer. It could be that certain things are available for everyone, certain things are secret or sensitive or public or private. You can assign those attributes to any type of data, and a filter is in place that only shows people the data that they have the access rights to. That delegated permissions is really necessary if you want to make a user-friendly application. It enforces a restricted view, so only users only see the domains where they have knowledge about. So either somebody is assigned to maintain customers or to products or to suppliers, for example, or only have some authority about a specific application like SAP or Salesforce, or the cross between the two. That's all very well maintained within an application like our master data management. And lastly, all the configuration that you've done in this application, you don't want it to maintain just in the MDM application. It should be made available in any other application. So there's APIs where you can connect to the data via push or via pull mechanisms, or you can subscribe to changes and then be notified of that. So that's what I hope to show you within the coming 7, 8, or 10 minutes. Take over the screen. Right. I assume my screen is visible. So this is our MDM situation. What you see here is a drop-down. You see the different domains that are available. So I could maintain the customers or finance or HR or organization structure or all my suppliers. So these are areas of data that are maintained within MDM. And here you see a master list, and the master list is actually the goal to keep that clean. It's the list in this case of customers as the company thinks it should be, regardless of all the variants that are in place in all the different applications. This is how you want to report on your customers. You see here, they have a code, they have a label or a name, a network key. Customers are of a specific type. They're in a legal entity and a sector. So these are the reference data that are assigned to each of these customers. And besides the master list, you can you also see the different applications that actually provide the data. So in this case, we have SAP for HANA, but there's also Tagetic is also supplying customer data in this case, and Bamboo HR and Exact Online, Salesforce, etc. So all these different applications provide customer data, and somehow this master data management system makes sense of all these variants of data in a very structured way. The customer domain, it's not on itself. For customers, you also have legal entities. So they're part of it. They have parent companies and customers maybe in different sectors. So you have your fashion or retail or leisure industries. Those are different sectors. And each customer you can assign to one of these sectors. This is my master list. Could be maintained from the data sources, could also be maintained by just entering data here or uploading data. That's less relevant. Here I see, for example, SAP for HANA. It's actually supplying data for a subset of these customers. So I have a few less customers, and I see with the blue dots, there's some new customers that came in via SAP for HANA, and they have not yet been approved. So we have the 4 eyes principles. You can put that, you can make that work if needed. So if a new customer is entered, it first needs to be approved before it's made available to the rest of the organization. But the most interesting part here is actually the mapping screen. And here I have a mapping screen, and you see SAP for HANA is supplying this data, and some versions map to the master. So I have 2 different variants. I have X bank and X pension, and it's defined that they're actually both aliases to X capital, for example. I see here Ocean Air, Ocean Airlines. It's the same, but not exactly. So recall, etc. So what you see here is, for example, SAP for HANA, there was data coming in. So some sales data, for example, for an unknown customer, in this case, X group. So what to do with that one? Now, you could say, well, it's a new customer. And then by dragging it here, I could create a new customer. But a business user could also see, hey, that's actually an alias for X capital. So then I drag it here and click. And then it's set as an alias for X capital. So if data is coming in either for any of these 3, it will be saved as X capital. But here you see Cohelion BV. That also came in. It doesn't match any of these here. So what I can do, I can drag it here. And now I've created a new master entry for Cohelion in this case. Now I press Save Changes. Then it's all stored. Now, SAP for HANA, typically it's a source system, but you could also have a target system, for example, Tagetic. And in Tagetic, data is made available for budgeting or for finance consolidation, for example. And you see here, there's a link between all of these. You also see, for example, intercompany customers, so Jackson Inc. and Jackson Holding. They're both exported as Jackson Inc. And the same here, what I showed you earlier. But here's the Cohelion. And if I drag it here, now this Cohelion, so if any data comes in from SAP for HANA, it's mapped to the master entry. And from there, it's mapped to this new entry in Tagetic. So Tagetic will actually see the data that comes in from Cohelion almost immediately. So if I press save and there's an API for Tagetic, then it would show that new customer in that API. So Tagetic can report on it. So that's for the mapping of the data. There's a lot of stuff that could help you make correct decisions. So I have here, I could see, well, there's different sectors that they're in. So this is all the reference data. I think another important part is actually for your customers is the golden record, what I mentioned. So here we have customer data. And for customers, we've defined a lot of different properties. So for example, I want to store the visiting address or the finance department. And for that, I want to know the building number and a Google Maps location and the time zone, etc. But also some revenue statistics or repair statistics. And these same applications that you just saw in the mapping screen, so Bamboo HR, Cohelion, Exact, etc., they could potentially supply all this data, but some are more reliable than others. So for example, I could say that for the visiting address, Salesforce could supply the data, but if SAP for HANA also has the data, then take the data from SAP for HANA. But some data, like the map, the location on the map, you could pick that manually via Cohelion platform, but it might also be available in Business One. And same here goes, for example, for the revenue statistics or the repair statistics. You see that Bamboo HR is supplying and typically is supplying that data, but otherwise Exact Online provides the revenue for the current year and the previous year. It's really easy to modify. And with this, you've made sure that each application supplies the data that it is the best. Each property is supplied by the best fitting application, sorry, the other way around. Of course, there's an API built specifically for this. So you could have an XSD, XML schema definition, or the JSON variant, not sure what that's called, and provide it to Exact Online. So if it wants to supply data, there's automatically a validation before it actually enters the system. So this is still on quite on a meta level. So we're describing the type of data. Other words are the schema definition or canonical data model. Now to see how that actually works, so I go back here to my master. For example, here, X capital, and I want to look what type of data was supplied. I can actually see that, okay, the building of the visiting address, Church Plaza, and it was supplied by the API and was about 2 months ago. And the same goes for the address and the location on the map. I see here that was actually entered by me 2 days ago, but the time zone came in also via the API. So all this data that I've previously specified that need to be known for each, in this case, customer, I can exactly see what system supplied the data and at what moments. Well, this is still a rather technical view, so it's our master data management application. What we also made is all this data can be made available in any other application with push or pull APIs. But to give you an example how it could also look like, if this is integrated in our PM, in our Cohelion data platform, what you see here, for example, it's a much more user-friendly interface. I'm logged into a data integration platform, and there's a section profiles, and there I can actually maintain, for example, my office specifications. So I could say here, well, the general information, it's in Amsterdam in this case, number of staff, 150, also provide geolocation, some opening hours, and only the person that actually has the rights to maintain this who actually sees this. Of course, you can make PDF exports, you can make XML exports, anything you want from this type of data. Now, of course, there's a lot more to tell, but I hope with this demo, I've demonstrated that master data management does not need to be very complex and abstract or technical to maintain. I'd like to hand over back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Roeland. I hope that everyone got a clear view how master data management can be done and how you can overcome, of course, the Excel mapping tables where Roeland was talking about. But now I would like to hand over to our last guest speaker, and that is Philipp Müller. Philipp Müller is Head of Global Performance and Analytics at Swissport and Advisory Board Member at Power Sales AG. Philipp has been working 17 years for Swissport, of which leading the performance and analytics globally for the last 5 years. Swissport went from silo thinking to a more holistic approach for reporting. And Philipp will tell more how master data management is done within Swissport, an international organization. But of course, Philipp will tell you all about it. Philipp, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dan. Depending where you sit, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Yes, I would like to tell you a bit more about how we at Swissport implemented MDM, how we work with MDM, and what the benefits are to use Cohelion's MDM approach. And as mentioned also in the introduction, we went from a silo thinking approach to a holistic approach, because obviously if you ask somebody from operations, what is the most important? The answer would be operations. If you ask the same question to somebody in finance, the answer would be finance. And this is where we really got the holistic view over the whole business as a whole. And MDM really helped us tremendously in achieving that. First, very brief, what is Swissport? What do we do? Where do we operate? What is our size? I think there are two sides. One is before COVID-19, which is on the left side. We operated in close to 50 countries, 300 airports, some 64,000 employees, so quite big. Mainly, not only, but in commercial aviation, which is you may, as a passenger, get in contact with our check-in agents and our colleagues that load and unload your baggage, but also we're second biggest company worldwide in terms of cargo freight. We operate lounges. We had some 5 million visitors before COVID, not last year, but before COVID. Apparently, this world looks a bit different now. I cannot share all the numbers because not everything has been yet communicated, and regarding forecasts, yeah, I'm not allowed. But you can imagine numbers this year as well as last year, they were considerably lower. But at least the industry is growing again, and we hope it continues as such for next year. But I think just, you see on the left side, so more than 60,000 employees, so you can imagine a bit the size of the company. Swissport grew mainly, not only, but mainly due to acquisitions. So the group acquired new businesses or purchased other companies. So obviously integration had to happen, which happened sometimes a bit better or more or less. So we needed a solution. Back then, we had no solution in place, no MDM. There was also no strategy, and strategy I mean out of IT, because we could now argue pros and cons, and whether an MDM system should sit within IT department or somewhere, wherever that is in the business. The situation at Swissport, it is now within my team, so within performance and analytics. Then we use another product from Cohelion, an application called DCM. And based on the first two bullet points and the fact that we are and were using DCM, it was kind of very logical that we would also use Cohelion's MDM. I mentioned Swissport grew mainly through acquisitions. So there was a lot of growth, sometimes several times within a year, and could easily be that we would open operations at 30, 40 new airports within 1 year in different countries. And from our point of view, also the simplicity, because I do not report to IT. My team is not consisting of IT professionals, but we manage this system together with Cohelion. So there's no IT knowledge requirement. It's really simple to use. Currently, we have more than 40 systems connected with Cohelion's MDM. A few examples, by far not the full list, but for what we use it for, the whole aircraft database, all our customers are part of it. Our organizational structure, so this can lead from a department at any airport in the world up to how countries would report in regions. And regions, I mean mainly organizational regions, not geographical regions that are static. The whole service management, business lines, training, as you will see later, and the whole workforce management. So how many hours would our employees work, at which airport, in what department, what time, all this is managed out of MDM. We have a very practical example. Some 5 years ago, the Swiss national soccer team, not as good as the Dutch one, but still we have one, went back from a soccer game. I think it was London. Then one of our tractors drove into the plane. What happened? The plane was, besides the soccer team, full of fans, and they took pictures with their smartphone. A couple of minutes later, it was already in local newspapers, and of course, we got to know it also via the newspapers. So first question was, okay, what happened? How serious is the damage? Is the person involved injured? And also, did the person that caused this damage to the aircraft, was this person actually trained? At that time, or in that specific moment, we couldn't answer the question. And that's, I think, a very good example also from a group's perspective and compliance perspective. We need to know this knowledge. For GDPR reasons, it's not a topic, but we cannot know, or we shouldn't know, of course, if person ABC at a certain location has this and that. That's to be managed locally, but we should know if rather 50 or 100% of our staff at a certain airport is trained. We have a lot of customers. We have a lot of different trainings. We also operate in close to 50 countries. So we have also a lot of country-specific regulations. So to make it short, we have more than 5,000 trainings in our system. And of course, we cannot, from a group's perspective, prioritize and see what it is. So MDM in this specific case helps us because we have, you see this in red, orange, and blue. We have 3 categories: business critical, safety critical, and other. We have categorized that into the groups and then in categories. So each specific training anywhere in the world is mapped to one of the categories. So this allows us from a group perspective to monitor training compliance. And this is very important also because it is strongly connected also then with insurance claims and so on. So that's why it's quite important. And since we have this, we can really categorize this very easily. Also, 5,000 sounds now like a lot. It is, but it was a big initial effort. But once this has been done, then of course, now we do not get every day 200 additional trainings. So now this is something that can be easily managed with little time, effort. Sorry.
Philip, if I may interrupt. Yeah, there it is.
I do apologize. I didn't. That's how it looks. Also a good example, because usually when we acquired a company, then especially on the IT side, we could not integrate the system overnight. That sometimes took a couple of months, a year. In certain cases were justified, it never happened, at least on IT side. So the good thing is, in many cases, within 1 working day, so roughly 8 hours, we can connect a system if the whole setup already exists, of course, in MDM, but this is now a good example of customers. So if we just want to integrate any source system with MDM and the whole setup exists, we talk about some 8 hours to do that or to build that link. This is done by Cohelion. Then on our side, of course, and this is a bit more time effort, but manageable, we do all the mappings. So I give you just this example. So we have 3 different countries: ABC, red, green, blue. So all of them, they handle customers, in many cases, even the same customers, but given the fact that they have different operating systems, let's say the country A example would have numbers as customer codes. Country B would have 2-letter codes, country C, 3-letter codes. So with MDM, we do this mapping. It's an initial effort. After that, only if we get a new customer, this has to be done. So usually this happens once or twice a day. Then out of MDM, wherever it goes, target system, could be another system, reporting system, whatever, we then can combine, consolidate all the data or customers from different source systems. Also, in terms of metadata management, data enrichment, what we have, it will be extended over time, but now in cargo especially, we have a lot of information, geographic information, opening hours. So when would forwarders, that could be trucks, road trucks, when they could come and deliver their freight, that then later on would go onto a plane, or from the planes, they would get the opening hours, delivery times, equipment that is available. It's also a bit like the commercial side, to show if a potential customer is interested, to see whether we have the equipment already, which of course makes it easier to onboard a new customer compared to if we don't have the equipment, and so on. So this then can also be used, so data can be managed, and it then can be further used, for example, to display on a website, in internal reporting, and so on. Change is the only constant. You certainly have heard that many times in your life. Our customers, they merge. This is a very good example also due to consolidation in the industry. So what happens if two customers merge? Yeah, we can solve that easily within MDM. What happens if today a certain country is reporting into another region compared to last year? This can easily be managed. We can easily consolidate, and we can easily compare apples with apples. So that being said, if today one country is reporting into another region, we would also see this effect for last year, which is important. Otherwise, we could never compare the new regional setup compared to last year. So all these kind of changes, they can really easily be done and compared. Benefits, it's very simple to use. I would roughly say a 2-hour introduction is enough. It's a fully customized tool, and this is what we really like, I have to say, because in many cases it's like, okay, you look what fits best, and then it may fit to 80%, better case 90%, but you still have the 10% missing. I think there's nothing that we want, but that is not available. It's really good, I have to say that. It's little effort, I mentioned, plus or minus 8 hours if the setup already exists to connect a new system, besides the mappings that need to be done, which I think is from a time and cost perspective attractive. And I mentioned we use another application from Cohelion, DCM. So in combination with this, it's a perfect fit of the two systems. And yeah, it helps us a lot. So lessons learned, say not everything that is good must necessarily be expensive or complex. I think it's really easy, simple, straightforward, customized to our needs. Therefore, back to you, Dan. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip, for sharing your experience at Swissport, and of course also how you have implemented master data management and the most important lessons learned. Before we head over to the Q&A, we'll start in a couple of minutes. I have 2 closing remarks. First of all, together with Rick, we have published a new white paper about all the in and outsides about master data management and also data quality. Besides the recording of this webinar, we will also share this white paper with you all via the email. But of course, if you already have master data management challenge at your own organization or would like to brainstorm, we have the possibility to set up an appointment with Roeland and Rick. If you're interested, you can send an email to marketing@cohelion.com and then we will set up the appointment. Secondly, if you want to know more about the master data management solution of Cohelion, it is possible to directly schedule an appointment with one of our data experts by simply scanning the QR code or see the link in the chat. Just simply click on the link and then you can schedule an appointment right away. But now it's time for the Q&A. I already saw some interesting questions coming in. Let's see. I see one question. Based on what criteria to choose an MDM type? Maybe that's a good question for Rick. So the question is, based on what criteria do you want to choose an MDM type or MDM solution?
Well, I think we, in a real life situation, we always pick master data management systems on based of quite a number of criteria, right? And a lot of these criteria relate to the requirements you have. But if I'm allowed to sort of pick two today, I would say for me, an important one is how easy is it to get access to the master data. And some of the master data management systems are rather sort of closed off, as if your master data is sort of locked into those systems. And for me, a master data management system should be part of an entire architecture. So it should be possible or easily possible to access that master data from all kinds of angles. So that will be my first requirement. How open is the master data? And then the second one, and that's sort of for me the theme of this webinar, and it is that is the system designed to also allow business users to work with the master data directly? Can they categorize the master data? Can they map it? Can they update the master data if they think there's something incorrect in there? And then, of course, in relationship to that is if they are able to do that, does it have a direct impact on their reports, or is the situation such that if they do make a change, that they still have to wait a day or a week before the change sort of is reflected in their dashboards and reports? So for now, I would sort of focus on those two criteria. I hope that makes sense, Dan.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Sure.
I see another question from Oleg. And the question is, if a list of MDM entities is selected, and each entity has different lists of attributes in different systems, on what criteria to select attributes for MDM entities that are kept in MDM? And I think maybe that is a good question for Roeland. And I think, yeah, there you go.
I will try my best. I interpret the question as how do I select what kind of properties I want to maintain for each customer or for each product or supplier. We actually work backward, so with the end in mind. So reporting, what do you need for reporting purposes, and or what do you need for exporting to other vendors or suppliers, or maybe even in a commercial brochure, what kind of data is needed in there. And that is the basis to define your schema, so what properties you want to maintain for each product or for each customer or for each supplier. Given that it's very easy to later add new properties, that's how we advise to start. So start small. I think in the case of what Philip mentioned, the warehouse properties, it certainly did not start with 300 attributes. I think we started with 50, but it grew over time. And the same happens with other customers with products. What you need initially for products might be limited, maybe 5 or 6 attributes, and that can grow over time. And then to determine what application provides the best data, yeah, that's a matter of knowledge and experience. So especially if 2 different applications provide the same data, then it's an organizational challenge to find out which one is more reliable. That's not a technical question, but it's easy to define it in our application for sure.
Yeah. And another question from Oleg was, based on what criteria to select a type of system integration? And then A, data synchronization, B, data integration, C, application integration. That was an additional question, maybe that can be answered by Rick or maybe Roeland.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Because normally in a real life environment where we have lots of applications, lots of dashboards, reports, we normally see all forms. So we see data integration, we see synchronization, and the third one was, I've forgotten them. So it sort of depends on the situation. I know it's the wrong answer, it depends on the situation, but I think that's the case here. But maybe I'm misunderstanding the question.
Yeah, maybe good to add, Rick. Oleg is ending his question with, are you agree with the statement, more synchronization, less integration?
More into, possibly. Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Possibly.
Maybe I should start that discussion with Oleg sort of offline in some way, because there's probably more to it than just that particular question.
Okay. Well, Oleg, as I already mentioned, it's possible to schedule an appointment with Rick or with Roeland. Just send us an email over to marketing@cohelion.com. I see there was one more closing question from P. Thaler. Question to Philip, are also the systems for the airlines connected to MDM? And do they also have access to it?
No, airline systems are not connected to MDM directly. We have, in certain cases, airline systems that feed our systems locally. And from there, so indirectly, it is connected with MDM. And do we share data with airlines? Yes, different forms. In some cases, we just use the data for meetings. In some other cases, we really provide the data to airlines. And we have also the third option that we even share data. We would give data to our customers, and we, in return, we get other data that we are not having.
Okay, thank you very much. We have time for one more question, but if I look at the chats, I think there are no questions yet. Is there maybe a closing remark from Rick or from Philip to close this webinar?
Well, what I can say is that I hope that the attendees got out of this this webinar that there has always been a tendency to place master data management in the hands of IT specialists. And of course, they will still have to do work, right, for forever and ever, probably. But I hope they sort of see that it can be very useful for an organization and for the business user themselves if they're also able to sort of update, insert, categorize the data itself. It will help to sort of raise the data quality level. And I think that's what we're all aiming for. So that would be my final remark, Dan.
Thank you very much. Maybe one closing remark from Philip?
Yes, our experience is, of course, at the very beginning, like providing data. Let's speak now about our 300 airports. Yeah, certain question marks, why? But the more value we generate, the more willing they are to give more data, even on a voluntary basis, let's say. And this is the great thing, because we can combine same data from different places. We can combine data from different departments from the same place, and they really see the value add as an output. MDM, of course, in the background, but they see the value add. So there's a lot of requests also internally on our side to provide even more.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is the end of our online master data management webinar. Thank you all for watching. And of course, a special thanks to our guest speakers, Rick van der Lans and Phillip Müller. Hope to see you next time during maybe a next webinar. Thank you very much. And this was the end.